Hello, everyone. All good? Is this loud enough? Just about. It's a very busy, buzzy room, which I think is good because there's lots of energy in here kind of on food loss and waste. Thanks, Lisa, for the enthusiasm. My name's Katie McCoshen, and I'm the Policy and International Engagement Manager at FOLU, which is the Food and Land Use Coalition. We've seen food systems and food loss and waste really rising up the agenda this COP. I think we all know here that food loss and waste is a kind of key solution to the climate change crisis in terms of its mitigation potential and also its important role that it plays in driving nutrition security. At COP28, we're kind of moving to implementation. We all know the stats, but what we didn't have was a roadmap that really connected solution providers on the ground and philanthropy, philanthropy being one of the key tools to catalyse action on food loss and waste until now. So if you see these lovely leaflets lying about, they're all about this philanthropic roadmap, which we're going to talk to today and play a key role in connecting solution providers, different countries, globally as well. FOLU is playing a part in this growing community of funders and field partners to work on transformative action. And it's been a real pleasure to partner with RAP, WRI, the IKEA Foundation, Robertson Foundation, Bezos Earth Fund, Global Food Banking Network, and ReFed. Today, we're going to start by diving into some of these findings, what it means globally, and what it means country level as well. So I'm going to start by handing over to Nico, if you'd like to come to this seat here. I've got a microphone for you, to kind of share the key messages from this roadmap, what it means, and how we're going to move this forward. Nico.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Katie, and hi, everyone. Welcome. Maybe I'll stand here as well, because then the back row can see me as well, even though I'm quite tall. Indeed, what can philanthropy do to help push the agenda and action to reduce food loss and waste? And as Katie said, yeah, we have been supporting this trajectory for about a year now, together with Robertson Foundation, Bezos Earth Fund, and later on also the Betsy and Jesse Fink Foundation, who stepped in to make this work possible. That's being done by FOLU, ReFed, RAP, and WRI. But not only them, I think they consulted with over 50 expert organizations and individual experts across the world to map out what is happening in food loss and waste, what is the problem, how can we quantify it, how can we define positive action going forward. And I think from the launch also last week, it was clear that there is a lot of ready action possible. And I just heard already that even some are getting funding now. And I also saw an announcement that in Africa, Agra has signed an agreement with the Green Climate Fund of 100 million to start working on food loss. So pushing it up the agenda is really working, and I think that's a role that philanthropy can do. And I think in the roadmap we identified also, what are some of these challenges? Imagine a company like Volkswagen writing off a third of the cars they produce, or a telephone company called iPhone writing off a third of the telephones they produce before they even reach the consumers. That's what we do in food. And as consumers, we pay for that. And not only the consumers pay the price, I think it's also environment, health, whatever paying the price. So these are huge challenges. It's an equivalent, the area of China, that we throw away every year. If food loss and waste were a country, it's the third largest emitting country in the world. So this is a ginormous, but it's much more than just a climate issue. Yes, a lot of methane gets emitted from landfills. Yes, a lot of CO2 gets emitted from land conversion and deforestation. But if we address food loss and waste holistically, significantly, it would also offer better access to healthy food. Farmers could have a better income. Jobs can be secured. And SMEs in food, processing, preservation, or circular economy can thrive and can be stimulated and would not have to deal with such a problematic business model as they're lying to chase now. And it's also about creating the right incentives. I think that's what the roadmap also brings out. This is not just happening just like that. We need to change mindsets to create better or new incentives. The recent publication by FAO also on the true cost of food that they did in the State of Food and Agriculture. Mind-blowing numbers of 15 trillion a year of public cost of the food system. And even the private benefits come nowhere close to that cost. So we need to start thinking different. And I think it's not impossible to change this. But we need also political will and good examples. And that's why it's so important also, I think, that at this COP, we get food loss and waste in the agreements, in the declarations. It's great to see that 135, an even growing number of countries are signing up, but it needs to come in the general declarations. And there is a lot of positive action that we see through the roadmap. We see that models of regenerative agriculture and agroecology are reducing production losses. It is possible. The work also, for instance, of the Global Methane Hub, with all that data monitoring, is bringing it out. What is happening? The data is getting organized. But also the work in renewable energy that many are looking on, in cold chain, in storage, is showing that it is affordable and doable to make a change. And following me, there are a number of country examples that will be brought out where we can hear a lot more concrete examples on this. And the four funders that have funded the study, we are working in it already. We are funding on-the-ground action in it already. But of course, a lot more is necessary. We don't have the depth of pockets individually to do it, but I think through collaboration we can make this work. And I think what we brought out in the study as well, what are our strong points as philanthropy, where we can offer to collaborate with others, with bilaterals, with private sector, with other funders. It's our strength to convene and to work on policy and to drive action. But it's also our ability to take risk and to develop evidence on how food loss and waste can work on farms and in production. We can work with private sectors to build new models, new business models, new ways of working that demonstrate to the world that actually this investment is possible. We can look at how can we change consumer behavior and culture around food. There's a lot going on, I think, this week also here on the debate on meat, the debate on plant-based, but we should not take the food loss and waste discussion out of that. As I said, it's unacceptable that we waste 30% globally. And last, I think we can support people like the climate champions and others, who are captaining this work and make their work possible, because they need to take center stage and they need a seat at the table to bring this forward and drive the action. So let me not take too much time, because I'm just here as a simple funder. It's the people that do the work, that have the action, that should be talking. So back to you, Katie, to give them the microphone and hear from them.
Thanks so much, Nico. And I don't think there's anything as a simple funder. I think funders play a key role, and that's what this roadmap lays out. So as Nico said, the roadmap is both global and local. And so we're now going to talk about national level action on food loss and waste and how we can catalyse that. So I'd love to bring Inda, Wanjira and Dana to kind of sit up at the front to kickstart this. And if people at the front want to come and sit, sorry, people at the back want to come and sit at the front, there are a couple of seats. It's time to get cozy in this room. So, Inda, I'm going to come to you first. I know that you are part of the Indonesia Business Council for Sustainable Development, and you partner very closely with RAP. And you've been leading a lot of the work on food loss and waste in country. So we'd love you to share with the audience, what can we learn from the existing projects that you've been doing on the ground, and kind of what's needed to take this forward?
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. You heard that Indonesia already mentioned several times, especially when we talk about the publication on the philanthropic roadmap. So I would like to share what we have done in Indonesia, especially on public-private partnership. So we have a platform in Indonesia supported also by RAP, namely GRAPS 2030. So it's a public-private partnerships that we work together to reduce tackling food loss and waste in Indonesia. So it was established in 2020. We invite all the stakeholders like the government, NGOs, business sector, because my organization background is on the private sectors. Yeah. So we have 22 signatories at the moment, and one of them called Surplus. They develop apps, so it's a digital-based innovation. So they develop an application where the consumers can buy from this platform the food that already expires. They can sell until 50%. So they work together with the Horeca, hotel, restaurant, and cafe. And then they will deliver the food. So until now, from 2021, they already save 100,000 tons food that can be wasted. And also they can save 140,000 US dollars for economic loss. And they also mitigate around 2,000 ton CO2. Yeah, so it's an achievement. This is only for one startup. We can imagine if we have many startups doing the same things. Yeah, and so we really promote innovation to our signatories. Our signatories coming from different backgrounds. We have a think tank organization. We have private sectors. We have also government to support us. Yeah, I think that's from Indonesia.
Thanks so much. And kind of moving from Indonesia to the States, Dana, we've heard about the role of innovation and startups, but what have you seen from ReFed that is a real opportunity to move the agenda forward on food loss and waste in country, and kind of how this roadmap and philanthropy plays a role in that?
Yes, well, the U.S. is one of the largest food wasters in the world, and in a lot of cases, it truly is waste. And so when we looked at this roadmap, I have to say, we've been working on this for quite a while, and we have often seen that this is a challenging topic for philanthropy, for the very reason that I think, was it Craig or no, Christy, maybe it was you mentioned, which is it's hard to figure out what to fund. And so I think this roadmap is really helpful as a starting place. It also was really challenging because as we got into it, we realized we can't list everything. You know, we got to list where to begin. So we were restricted to just a few projects in the roadmap, which of course was a challenge in itself. So some of the opportunities, you know, and I think it's important to keep in mind first that food waste is not one problem, right? It's very different if you're talking about tomatoes not being harvested than if you're talking about too many potatoes being left on the breakfast platter at a restaurant. And so you really have to consider that as you think about the solutions. Having said all of that, I think there are a few things that we did highlight in the roadmap. The first is really the role of the private sector and how we can start to mobilize action. We are a partner in something called the Pacific Coast Food Waste Commitment that brings businesses together on the west coast of the U.S. and has, over the last 4 years, been working to kind of establish its structure and has shown about a 5% decrease in food waste for the retailers that are involved. So that's been really exciting, and the project that we've really put forward is to expand that to be a national project. And in fact, we just launched this this week here, the U.S. Food Waste Pact. There are cards in the back with QR codes that have more information with some of the major food companies in the U.S., including Walmart, Whole Foods, some of the major food service companies as well. So check it out, and you can see all the companies that are involved. So that was one of the big projects, is really mobilizing it. And why philanthropy is important there is that even though, you know, I often hear private sector, you know, why should philanthropy fund any work in the private sector? And it's because the individuals who are working in the companies on this topic do not have budgets. That is why. And so if you want to get something up and running in the private sector, you need someone else to figure it out and hand it on a golden platter to the sustainability manager at a company so that they can then take it up the chain and get some buy-in. And often those people are facing many, many other issues as well that they're responsible for. The private sector also, there's a role to play in innovation. So there's, we have a great example of a company called Afresh. It got its first grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for $100,000. They were able to do research. They have now grown into a billion-dollar company more, providing shelf life extension coating solutions for food. And they're taking that into developing countries as well as developed. So a role to play there. The third is policy. In the US, there's federal, state, and local policy to consider. And there are, you know, at the federal level, regulations to work on. The state level is actually very important because of the jurisdictions in the US. And then local policy is really moving, right? They can act quicker. And not only when you fund local policy, you also fund kind of the mobilization of local action in more ways than just policy. There's consumer. In the US, almost half of the food waste is from consumers. There's a lot of research to do to figure out what interventions to fund, and I'll just cite the very large, for anyone who's been to the US, the very large size of portions in the US as a key area of opportunity. And then also there's, I think there's a lack of activism and some work to do on financial innovations and looking at reporting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. I think that you hit the nail on the head there. Philanthropy has a real unique opportunity to play in catalyzing the role of the private sector in reducing food loss and waste, and that's something that we saw come out very clearly in the roadmap. Moving from waste, we're going to go to talk to Wanjira about what WRI and FOLU have been doing in Kenya and Ethiopia. So, you know, issues of losses there are more to do with post-harvest losses, challenges for the farmer rather than the consumption end, which you've heard a bit more about from Indonesia and America. So, Wanjira.
Well, thank you, Katie. And it's good to see my friends from the food banking, Lisa, Michael, everybody who's here. I spoke yesterday at an event where we were talking about the fact that food loss and waste and food banking are anchored in so many traditions, and part of this work should be uncovering some of those traditions of how we we preserved and prevented waste and took care of the most vulnerable. Nobody went hungry. It was sort of coded, all of it in tradition. So I look forward to some of that. And you're right, Katie, a lot of the food loss and food waste dynamics in Africa are quite different. There's a lot of it anchored in the early stages of the food chain, on-farm waste due to poor storage, poor cold chain, or none at all. And a lot of that is anchored again in how and who is producing this food. And surprisingly, 80% of food produced by smallholder farmers, a majority of them women. But guess what? The hungriest and the poorest too. So those producing the food are also the hungriest. And I think that's where we really have to hone in on what's needed for this particular system, and that there isn't one blanket solution to food loss and food waste, and improving food systems has to be about a granular understanding of what's happening at that level. We have two things in particular that I'm excited about in Kenya and Ethiopia in our food work. One is working with government to understand and to measure. At WRI, that's one area where we pride ourselves in how do we understand protocols for measurement, how do we act on the basis of evidence, what's going on, and that helps us make sure that action is local. In fact, Ethiopia and Kenya, countries that are right next door to each other, but the dynamics of food quite different. The diets and the food storage systems quite different. And so looking at those protocols has been a very important part of this work, and making sure that we actually roll them out at the very local level. The other is understanding what's happening actually at the food loss and food waste. There is the actual storage and agricultural processes that would ensure that we have longer life, but there's also an understanding of the food value chains. Where does that food go? Why is it being stored so long in one place? And what are ways that we can access food storage and food cold chains that doesn't cost so much? And so breaking this down, and we're starting to see innovations. This is one thing I love about Africa. If you haven't been there, the level of innovation around issues that we're facing, people now seeing food cold chains that farmers can purchase a small space to put the avocados so that they don't go bad and they make it up the value chain. So these are sort of the highlights, I think, and happy to go into more detail.
Thanks so much, Wanjira. And I think granularity is a key thing that we need to get to, in addition to the global convening and the global momentum. Kind of having a laser focus on where food loss and waste is happening and why is critical in terms of how we then adapt solutions to that. Everyone here knows that they were invited to an interactive session. So you're probably thinking, what are we doing with our wonderful speakers up here? But we're now actually going to move to the interactive session. It says speed dating. It's actually going to be a shark tank, but we're going to name it a dolphin tank because it's more friendly than sharks. And Andy has timed it perfectly with his entry. Hi, Andy. So yeah, we'd like to invite the kind of funders for this roadmap up to speak, and give our panelists a round of applause, and please join in the discussion as well. So yeah, Christy, Nico, and Andy, if you're able to push through, if you'd like to come sit at the front, and I will also hand over. I also hand over to Craig Hansen from WRI to walk us through this next fun interactive section.
Great. So how many people here know what a shark tank is? Is this an American type of thing? Raise your hand if you know what a shark tank is. All right, so that's about half. So what this is... Dragon's Den. Okay, Dragon's Den. How many know what a Dragon's Den is? Okay. So you pick your animal, right? You get in the middle. Basically, this is a chance for people to pitch ideas to basically financiers, right? You get a short period of time to kind of be compelling and basically get the feedback, right? Now, they're not going to actually hand out cash today, so just whoa, the game is on. All right, just don't advertise. Close the door. This is getting real serious now. Here we go. Nico, you be careful. So anyway, no, that really, we're gonna call on some folks. We're gonna give you 2 minutes. You're gonna pitch your idea, right? I'm gonna do like 2 or 3 or 4 at a time, right? And then I want to hear from the donors here up on the table. I'm going to introduce you in a second here. Donors, you can get feedback, right? This is actually helpful for all of us. Like, so we get a sense of what they're looking for, what sinks in, what doesn't quite fit, etc. Right? So that's how I want to use this. I think it's really insightful for all of us as we do that. And also, donors get a chance to hear about what's starting to bubble up from this audience here, right? So anyway, that's what we're going to do in this dolphin tank exercise. Let's quickly just go down the list here. You can introduce yourself briefly and your organization.
I think most of you have heard me already, so I can skip this.
Andy Jarvis with the Best Earth Fund.
Hi, everyone. Christy Loper with the Robertson Foundation.
Great, perfect. So I'm going to tee it off, and actually we've planted a seed in the audience on this one. So just to get it going, that's you, Lisa. So I want to turn things over to you and basically share some initial kickoff thoughts. All right, why don't we hand her the microphone?
Seats up here.
Yes.
Yeah, there are
Does anyone want to
folks
sit?
back here. We've got like 3 seats up here if you want to take a seat. Front row, there's no popcorn, but it'll be fun. Yeah, go ahead and stand, yeah. Maybe we can make this the spot right here. You're looking at them and the audience can see you.
There's one more seat.
There we go.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Craig. And I just want to thank all of you again for just the initiative in putting something like this together. So you all have heard a lot from me today if you've been at any of our sessions. But I just really want to make a pitch to consider not just investing necessarily in ideas, but also in people as part of this, right? And so we have been talking a lot about food loss and waste, how local it is, how challenging it is to identify where it is in the system, and who or what organizations those groups are working with that could absolutely make that change. And of course, I stand here today in my role as the head of the Global Food Banking Network. We represent food banking organizations in 50 countries, primarily in the Global South, that 365 days a year, 100% of what is on their mind is how do we figure out how to access surplus food in the system and redistribute it so people facing hunger have access to it. And today, those organizations are rescuing just 1% of all the possible food loss and waste that we are seeing. Now, not all food loss and waste is nutritious and edible and good for redistribution, but a lot of it is. And we know that just that rescuing of 1% means that they are mitigating 1.5 million metric tons of CO2. And we're in the process of calculating what that means from a methane perspective. And when we found out about this amazing opportunity for the roadmap, we went out to our network and we asked, what more could you do with the right investment? And they put together a plan to move from 1 to 5% by 2030, which would go a long way, I think, in reaching that SDG goal of 12.3. But I really want to just make the case, though, that when you're investing in these types of organizations, you're investing in champions for food loss and waste reduction at the local and the national level. These are the people that are advocating for food loss and waste policy change. They're the ones that are advocating for the food system to be more equitable, to expand social protection, to make sure that smallholder growers are not the primary people facing hunger. And they're doing it on very shoestring budgets. And the one thing, of course, that I think is great about our community is that we're already networked. And so that means that if you have a great idea, an innovation, or something like that, it can easily be scaled and replicated. And I want to give an example specifically of this. In 2018, I'm looking at Anna Catalina, if she's in here, there was an amazing program called Reagro that was piloted in northern Colombia, and the goal was to try to reduce surplus on farm, primarily of fruits and vegetables. That ended up having an amazing impact in that community in terms of increasing the availability of fruits and vegetables. Within 2 years, that program was scaled across Colombia. Within 3 years, that program was replicated across Latin America. And today, we are working with food banking organizations in more than 18 countries to be working with growers to be rescuing surplus that would otherwise go to waste. And so there is real opportunity to use this amazing network of local leaders, not GFN per se, but these local leaders to be levers of change as part of the transformation, not just on food loss and waste, but on food systems in general. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right, well done. Very compelling pitch. So Lisa just set the standard, the benchmark there. So who's next? Who wants to share an idea? Come on up. You're the next contestant. Yeah, do it over here.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Peter Owen. I'm the head of the Food and Land Use Program at Planet Tracker. We're a non-profit financial-focused think tank, so we look to use finance and the power of finance to change the underlying systems, in this case, the food system. So what we want to do is influence investors and banks to think about food loss and waste. At the moment, they're not thinking about it at all. Nico, your analogy, it's actually one I've used myself, but would you find any other industrial system where you actually destroy or lose a third of your production before it reaches the customers? Absolutely not. And yet investors, banks are lending into this system. They're supporting that broken system. We need to challenge them to change their thinking, to reallocate their capital, to impose policies and engage with companies, to then challenge those companies to do the right thing. Your point about, there's a lot of food being wasted, only getting 1% at the moment. A lot of the big companies are the ones that sort of hold the bag. And we can challenge them to do better things with their food when it's usable. We can also challenge them to do better things when it's now become genuine organic waste, so that it doesn't just go into landfill, it actually goes into other productive purposes, doesn't contribute to methane emissions. So that's what we want to do. We want to be able to challenge the financial system and then also challenge the large companies themselves. Because our view is that grassroots work is incredibly important. And a lot of this food loss and waste issue is really granular. It is the tomatoes in the field. It is the food on the plate. But unless you change the system as a whole, what the large corporates are doing, then a lot of the grassroots work will ultimately be coming up against a wall because the big companies will be saying, no, we don't do it that way. So that's what we want to do. We want to challenge finance, to challenge the corporates, to change the system. Thank you.
Oh, right here. We will get it to everyone, right here. Here you go. We'll, after this third one, we'll stop and we'll get some quick reflections and we'll go to the next round.
Thank you so much. So if you can let me know when I start, when my time starts. Okay, cool. Can I start? Perfect. So hi, everyone. My name is Nancy Nkomo. I'm from an organization called Solidaridad. So essentially, we are a civil society organization. So we work in just over 50 countries globally, but we work very closely with smallholder farmers. And I'd like to say that a lot of the farmers that we work with are what we call invisible farmers, right? So when I say invisible, it's in the sense that they're not connected to the other side of the market, right? I think a point was raised to say, when we look at food waste, we need to identify which part of the value chain it's located in. And you'll find a lot of the time farmers, because they don't have market insights, they're sending a lot of produce out which doesn't eventually get sold, or a lot of it then has to come back. So at Solidaridad, there's an application that we call Farmer to Market, which is essentially a digital application where we try to link, essentially as the name suggests, the farmer to the market, right? And what this then does is, by working with other partners as well, we are currently in the process of collecting a lot of data that will essentially help us to predict the yield of a particular farmer, right? So what this means is that when a farmer is producing at a certain stage, you can tell that farmer X is going to produce X tons, and the market is already sort of ordering that particular product, so that they're not sending product that's not wanted in the market. So in this particular case, I think the request is really to say, how do we make the farmer visible? And how do we integrate digital solutions to be able to sort of address food loss at the market stage? Thank you.
All right. So, fellow funders here, what do you all think? Who wants to go first? Quick reflections? Andy.
Do something. Before we answer, I want to do a selfie, which is going to be epic. Get in this selfie. This is a great room. You don't have this view that I have, but it's like energetic, kind, eager people with amazing ideas. So let's do a... No. We're going to do a selfie. Get in this. Get in this. Here we go. Ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Hey! Okay, great. I don't do that in all the events. A few of you, this is the first one I've done that, but it's great. Okay, I love all three ideas, and that's because, I mean, there's one thing that you learn when you work in the food system, and you learn pretty quickly, there are no silver bullets, right? When you're dealing with a complex system, you rather than silver bullets, you're looking for leverage points, and it's changed the system, as Peter quite rightly said. And all three of those ideas are exactly on that. It is looking at the system and where are those leverage points that you can hit And if you change it there, it has knock-on effects and it has this multiplier effect. And that's exactly what we need to do in this space. I will say there's no silver bullet, but there's one golden bullet, and that is leadership. And that's a universal truth. And I fully agree, Lisa, that what we need today are leaders right now, be it at the very top to the very bottom, but we need leadership. And that is what's holding us back, is a lack of leadership in some parts of the system. But if there's one thing that you should always invest in, it's leadership.
Go ahead, Tracy. I said it already.
You know, fully agree with Andy's comments. Those are exactly the types of solutions that we're interested in. And Nancy, you and I were talking a little bit at the break. Would love to hear from you. You know, we mentioned a little bit about kind of like being able to do some of these systems related to livestock farming. Is that something that you're looking at as part of your process?
Thank you. So I think in particular, and thank you for the feedback and the question. So when it relates to livestock at the moment, so the particular application is not limited to, say, for example, crop production. We just haven't started onboarding livestock farmers, but I think as sort of a next phase, we can look into how that, what sort of implications that has for livestock, yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I totally agree with Andy. You know, leadership is part of that, and we're all leaders ourselves. So we should not leave ourselves out of the game. But I think hearing the three pitches, I think the beauty is possibly in the connection of the three also. If we talk about surpluses from farming, why are they at risk of being wasted? Possibly because production is not properly planned with the timing of market demand. Financing is not coming in the right moments of the season and things like that. So how can we, in a way, facilitate a roundtable dialogue, you know, to start organizing the systems locally much better, so that we avoid the loss and waste in the first place, because then we don't even have to talk about it.
Yeah, and there's a lot you can criticize about the COP process, but the fact that it brings all of you together in this room, you know, not only to connect with us, but to connect with each other is really a beautiful thing. So, you know, really want to encourage, you know, people from different sectors and different countries to be talking to each other and sharing ideas with each other as well.
Fantastic. Let's go on to round two. Hands up right here.
Can you film it for me? Can you film it? Okay.
You know, it's my first speaking opportunity at COP. It's exciting. Thanks. Thank you so much, everyone. So my name is Nika Mawini. I'm here with the Canadian Climate Action Network, and within that I have two nonprofits, one called Youth Climate Save Canada and one called Sustainable Food Transition Institute. So one of the projects we're currently running with Youth Climate Save is focused on the city of Toronto, Canada, where I'm located. And in Toronto, only about 30% of residents have access to composting, and what that means is that the majority of other people living in Toronto, their buildings are privately managed, the waste management, and so they actually don't have a place to compost their food waste. So we have a project called Toronto Tackles Food Waste, and we created a guide for apartment tenants and residents of Toronto for ways that they can individually reduce their food waste, but we also created a document for them to give to their property management board with innovative solutions that the apartment building can purchase or use that addresses some of their problems that they didn't have composting. For example, they were worried about the smell, or they were worried about the space it would take or the cost. So we created that, and we also did a survey to analyze like what are the main reasons for food waste at the local level. So yeah, just to highlight the importance of really looking at a city level at food waste, because a lot of household food waste can be prevented with better city policies and local solutions. So thank you for listening.
Hands again. Who's next? Where?
Hi again, Mariana Jimenez, CEO from the Mexican Food Banking Network, PAMEX. We are a national network comprised of 57 food banks. Nowadays, we rescue over 150 million kilos of suitable for human consumption food, and we serve 1.8 million people, avoiding 220,000 tons of CO2 emissions from going to the atmosphere every year. So what we are looking for is to finance our voluntary agreement, Pacto por la Comida in Mexico, which is really developing good outcomes within our signatories. Right now we have 11 signatories of companies within such as Nestle, Kellogg, Unilever, and Walmart, among others. And only in this year, we have achieved preventing 120,000 kilos of suitable for human consumption food from going to waste with the Target Measure Act methodology. So also, we are looking forward to strengthening our capacity to recover more and better food, especially from the Mexican field, where almost 48% of the food is being lost. And we want these surpluses of nutritious food not in landfills, but in the plates of 1.8 million people that are needing this food. So we want to scale our impact from 1% for 5% in the next years. And we want also to cut harmful emissions of methane in this process. Thank you.
Excellent. One more for this round. Let me see hands. Who wants to be the third one? Right up here in front row.
Yeah, I wish I have a young person to present this, like the ones. You know, we are saying climate change could be addressed partly through diversification of systems. And the most efficient crops are legumes to diversify systems. And when we see, you know, in Africa, legume producers have no incentives to grow them, partly because of, you know, contamination of aflatoxins. If you see what Malawi is producing, 90% of the food, you know, which used to be a major export earner, is no more exportable because all the countries rejected it because of contamination. And then people start to consume it locally, which has a health hazard. So, and this is an example in almost every African country. So how can we make sure that, you know, we develop a strategy, an early warning system, you know, a capacity, but also a policy to regulate and to help farmers, both to benefit, but also help the countries to export. That's a very important investment that we are looking for. Thank you.
All right. All right. Foundations, what do you think?
Yeah, no, thanks. And I think again here, you know, three brilliant cases. And what strikes me, especially from the last two in a way, is the need for data and good quality R&D. You know, to be able to validate what works and what doesn't work and to solve a problem. Because these are not new problems. They are existing problems, but that need new answers, new questions to find these new answers. And yeah, I think by bringing these out and in venues like this and other platforms, I think we can hopefully also, as philanthropy, trigger that money flows to the bottom to where these answers need to be found, the right localized solutions, whether it's for compost making in Canada or finding an answer to aflatoxin. These are not the same questions, but they need their investments and to roll that in. I think that's a role exactly that philanthropy can play.
Yeah, again, three excellent ideas. And, you know, as we mentioned earlier, we're excited about kind of the possibility of connection and leverage. And so, Nika, I have a question for you, which is, you know, I love the focus on composting and kind of getting, you know, overcoming barriers to composting. And I'm so curious if that is also being paired with potential regulations, either at the city or provincial level on organic landfill bans that would then, you know, kind of provide more opportunities for folks to compost. Mariana, I loved your, kind of example on the Pacto por la Comida. And we heard earlier from Dana Gunders of Refed about a pact in the United States that's also working with companies. And I'm so curious, if there's an opportunity for you to have a conversation with Refed and to see if there's some of the same companies that might be, interested in working across borders. And on your idea, the idea of how can we get more legume farming in Africa, there's a big movement on protein diversification and, how can we get away from, how can we consume more legumes, kind of as a global community. And so I think there's lots of connections to be made to that movement as well. So thank you.
It's all been said there, but I mean, I think what all three of those ideas are fantastic, and they're showing the kind of the grassroots nature of getting things done, which is absolutely critical. You also need fair winds to get all of the right incentives moving towards that, right? And I think, for example, in food banking, in buildings and everything, there's often regulations and policies that go against more of that. You're always almost fighting that enabling environment, and I think that's a critical thing. Is so that these, you need like 1,000 flowers to bloom, so that every building, every food bank is getting filled, every building is doing their own bit, and that's a critical leverage point in that. I keep talking about leverage points, and that's very much where philanthropy comes through. Is what are those leverage points? Policy is absolutely critical, regulation and so on and so forth. And the same, it's agricultural policy in the case of Africa for that critical diversification that needs to happen. And technology, that's where there are ways of avoiding those important legumes getting aflatoxins and being wasted. It's market systems and policy and technology.
Great. Do we have enough candidates for round 3? I see 1, 2, 3, I'll do 4. All right, right here.
Running out of money.
So I'll be super quick to let everyone get in. So the thing I would like to have funding for, I am David from RAP, and we've been mentioned a few times today. Thank you to everyone who's given us a shout out. So we would love to ask for funding for the public-private partnerships that you've heard about today. You've heard from Inda, you've heard from Mariana, you've heard from Dana. RAP started the idea of the public-private partnerships for tackling food waste in the UK nearly 20 years ago. And we've been really pleased to work with partners that you've met today and in South Africa and Australia and Brazil to bring this model where it brings together lots of parts of the sector, leverage, drive. Already and from Inda, the impact that they're having in their countries, and we're so super proud of that and pleased to be involved. So please support them and support us.
Right. It was behind you, sir.
Hi, folks. My name is Rachel, and I work at a youth-led global organization called Youth for Nature. I'm thinking about what you're talking about leverage points, and I think one of the biggest leverage points that we have in all system change is young people, and that young people are leading on solutions already in really radical ways that we urgently need all across the world. And Youth for Nature runs a storytelling project where we bring young people into a community to tell their stories. We equip them to tell their stories. We help them establish the work that they do in this kind of global narrative of what they're working on. And we see lots of young people talking about food, especially at the intersections of nature and climate. Everything from composting in conflict-affected areas to how we use nature to create more robust and resilient food systems. And so I think that when we can build this network of young people who learn from each other, who are given the resources that they need to do their work at a local level, it also empowers them to be able to address the unique problems in their own communities instead of these large blanket processes that we sometimes have that come top down. This allows us to be like more bottom up, and youth are already leading on this in so many ways. I think you were next.
Right in front of you. There you go.
Thank you. I'm Joshua Nzombe from Zimbabwe, but I lead 16 young farmer organizations from SADC. I'm under SACAO. SACAO, it's a board for farm organization in SADC. So I lead the youth wing. So I wanted to say quite different from what others were saying. My issue as a young farmer is mainly on preserving the food before we even sell it. We are not mainly thinking of those who are going to eat and leave some. So mine is a bit different in the sense that I'm thinking of incorporating indigenous knowledge systems and also how nature works. For example, if you look at because most of young people we work in are from the rural areas where there's no electricity. They don't have the transport is a challenge, and so what usually happens is that there's a period of time where we get a lot of food, and then there's a time where there's no food at all. So when there's a lot of food, the prices are very low, and when there's no food, this is maybe in a space of 5 to 6 days. This is not in a long time. So preservation using indigenous knowledge systems, what our forefathers used to do a long time ago, then incorporating that with nature, looking at how bees contain their honey, how ants put together their houses. Even if it's hot outside, inside it's very cold. For refrigeration purposes. And also, lastly, the issues to do with insect farming. Insect farming, I think we all now know that it's worth $9 billion. And it's very interesting in the sense that we are also reducing tilling a lot of land for soya if you want to get protein, So we are reducing a lot of CO into the atmosphere by taking the waste, and then we do things like black soldier fly, where we produce a lot of protein, and also maximizing the waste and reducing the methane gas, etc. Thank you.
Last one right here. Here you
go. I'll be quick. Hi, everybody. My name's Yvette Cabrera from the Natural Resources Defense Council. I lead our food loss and waste work there. We are an environmental nonprofit based in the U.S. We are very thankful and honored to have some of our work featured in the philanthropic roadmap with the Zero Food Waste Coalition that we do on passing state organic waste bans in the U.S. And another solution I'd love to have you all consider is unlocking the power of city governments. So NRDC has been working with city governments for many years now. We have a program called the Food Matters. I think, still working. We currently have 22 city partnerships across the U.S. And I will just tell you a quick story. We, back in 2016, with funding from the Rockefeller Foundation, we decided to invest heavily in terms of resources and technical assistance in 2 cities in the U.S., Baltimore and Denver. And we've seen the kind of fruits of that labor really come to fruition in the past year. In Baltimore, we spent a long time kind of working through their data, building mayoral interest and support for this issue, connecting with local partners and implementing different programs and policies around food waste reduction in the city. And just this year, through that partnership, they were able to get a $4 million grant from the EPA to build a state-of-the-art composting facility that will process residential organic waste in the city. And that was matched with $4 million from Baltimore's own government funding. So really powerful solution, and something I think we should put more support behind.
Thank you so much. So we've got, I want 3 minutes, so 1 minute each of quick reflections. And if you can end, for everyone's benefit, if you can end with one piece of advice, if someone wants to approach your foundation, what's a piece of advice or a helpful hint you would give to increase their odds of winning?
Thanks, Craig. Well, what I loved about those 4 pitches are that they were very diverse, and they were at all different points along the supply chain and kind of where we're seeing food loss and waste. And I loved that 2 of them were from organizations focused on youth. We know that that's how change happens in this world, and so thank you. Piece of advice for us. So I mentioned this in the previous panel. For us at the Robertson Foundation, you know, there's so many reasons to focus on food loss and waste. You know, our kind of real interest in this is around reducing climate emissions, and so we're particularly interested in solutions in the meat and dairy sectors, and so that's kind of where we're trying to source ideas right now. So if you have ideas about reducing food loss and waste in the meat and dairy sectors through pulling the largest levers possible, we'd love to hear them. Thank you.
Great. I have a complaint to the organizers of this event. I was told this was a Shark Tank, a Dragon's Den, whatever you want to call it, and you know, and we were going to be tough. And you know, there's always in those programs bad ideas where we can be really nasty. And I was looking forward. But they were.
You missed it's a dolphin tank.
They were all good. You know, so come on. Love rap, hate food waste, insects, yes, youth. You know, there's a direct relationship between age and goodness of ideas. And you know, every year that passes, my ideas get worse. So absolutely, you know. So anyway, wonderful. All of this needs to happen. A tip for us, and this is now talking about as Earth Fund. I kept saying it. We're looking at these leverage points, right? The food system is $13 trillion, right? I learned that from the Planet Tracker people over there. $13 trillion business. You know, food philanthropy over the next few years is a few billion. You know, we're not going to change the world plate by plate with philanthropic capital, but philanthropic money is looking for those leverage points, you know, where something catalytic here creates much more. So it's always about that, being catalytic in philanthropy. So, you know, so it's not necessarily, you know, in this city or in that, or in this place or in that value chain doing this, but it's how do we change the system to have much bigger impacts. That's very much the way, what we're looking for.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for great pitches indeed, again, the last series. And actually, some of them quite concrete on what we are, as a IKEA Foundation, also engaged in. Issues like black soldier fly, for sure. Issues like how do we revalue urban waste into something that can feed a circular economy in agriculture. Because if we don't break down the linear channels to think more circular of how we keep nutrients, elements into the system without just flushing them down rivers, oceans, whatever. We're not going to make it. We're not going to stay within 1.5 degrees, and we're also not going to. We're never going to make the SDGs work. So those are definitely ideas that we are open to, have ears to, and whether that's an entry point from a poverty aspect, a youth employment aspect, an entrepreneurial aspect, or a climate aspect. I think we are happy to listen to all these aspects because it's where that comes together that the energy and the solutions are. It's not, as Annie said as well, it's not looking for that one silver bullet. It's looking for that system change opportunity to see how we can collaborate among each other and not compete with each other for the best idea. That we are happy to say, okay, let's enter into a conversation and see what's possible.
Great. Let's give it up for our panelists here. Christy, Andy, and Nico. Thank you so much. They still have dollars in their wallet, so...
we only work in euros.
In euros, any currency, right? I think people will accept, right? All right, I'm going to turn things over to close things up. Here you go.
Thanks so much, Craig, and thanks, everyone. I'm sorry that we weren't mean. I don't think the point was to be nasty. I think the point was to bring everyone together and kickstart this conversation. This roadmap is the beginning of a future journey. We've got the rest of COP, we've got next year, and I believe there's also today a mix and mingle happening at 5. I'm looking for global food banking folk. So please continue this conversation after this event and through the rest of the day, and thanks for your energy and engagement. Thanks.
All right.